Welcome back. All right, we've talked about relative age. This is older than this thing. This is younger than this thing. Let's talk about geologic age. Not putting necessarily an exact number on it, but just kind of a time frame. All right. So in geology, we have something called the geologic time scale. It breaks Earth's entire history, going back 4.543 billion years, and it's broken down into eons, eras, periods, and epochs. So eons are kind of the four big chunks that we can initially break down all of geologic time in. I just moved me out of the way so you can see what's going on here. Now I'm in the way again. Let me move me up here. So the Hadean is the time between Earth's creation and the age of the oldest rocks discovered thereabouts. So the Earth formed 4.54 billion years ago. The first rocks didn't appear until about 4 billion years ago. This is 4,000 million years, or in other words, 4 billion years. So there's a period where wasn't necessarily any rocks formed. Why was that the case? Well, remember, early Earth, as things were coming together, early Earth was hot. For the most part, it was molten on the exterior, so it was hot. It was just liquid lava, essentially. So it had not yet cooled down for rocks to form yet. So that was the Hadean. So the oldest rocks that we have are around 4 billion years old, give or take. Then we have the Archean, which is roughly when single-celled life developed. So around 4 billion years ago is the first signs of ancient single-celled life, just bacteria. And that was really it up until about 2.5 billion years ago. So for 1.5 billion years, it was just kind of single-celled life floating around in the Earth's early oceans. And we have the Proterozoic. This is when multi-celled soft-bodied organisms appeared in the ocean. So very simple life, soft-bodied, think like jellyfish and things like that. So that was really what evolved from 2.5 billion years ago all the way up to 541 million years ago. So still not much, and everything's still in the oceans. And then you get the Phanerozoic eon, and that occurred from about 541 million years ago until present. This is when abundant animal and plant life started to really take foot. Animals and plants moved to land, evolution, things flourished. That's where we're at. So here's a kind of a snapshot of what the Hadean might have looked like. Again, just a molten hot ball of molten magma and lava. So again, no solid rocks were able to form yet because the Earth hadn't cooled yet. It took many hundreds of millions of years, or almost 500 million years for that to occur. When it did form in the Archean, again, simple single-celled life. This is what it may have looked like. These little things here are called stromatolites, which are just collections of bacteria. Proterozoic, soft-bodied organisms in the ocean. Again, jellyfishes, other types of sea life, etc. And then we get into the Phanerozoic eon, abundant animal and plant life. Everything that we know existed in this Phanerozoic eon, at least that we commonly think of as far as life, animals, plants, etc. I'm going to move me back down. Nope, I'm not. I'm going to move me back up. Because now we're going to get into, let me move me again, eras. So we can break down eons, specifically the Phanerozoic eons, into eras. So the Phanerozoic eon can be broken down into even smaller chunks into the Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic. So the Phanerozoic, which is the current eon, meaning visible life, divided into 3 areas: Paleozoic, which is Latin for ancient life; Mesozoic, which is Latin for middle life; and Cenozoic, which is Latin for recent life. The most distinctive changes in fossils happen between eras. So when we're looking at from 541 million years ago to present, the demarcation here, typically we look in the fossil records and we see these kind of big evolutionary changes from one era to the next. So going back to the Paleozoic, again, still mostly ocean stuff. We're starting to see some animals creep onto land. We're starting to see some plants creep onto land, but still mostly ocean-dwelling creatures and plants. And then when we get into the Mesozoic, now it's dominated by land animals, and plants and trees have taken root on land. And then Cenozoic, recent life, really the dawning, the age of the mammals as they kind of took hold after the dinosaurs went extinct. So so between the Mesozoic and the Cenozoic, that's when a large extinction event happened. Cenozoic, recent life, when kind of mammals took foot and kind of the animals evolved that we know today. We can further divide eras into periods. Now, it's typically periods are the unit of geologic time we, in this class, will mostly talk about. So breaking down the Paleozoic into things like the Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous, and Permian. Breaking down the Mesozoic into Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous. Breaking down the Cenozoic into the Paleogene, Neogene, and Quaternary. So this is kind of where we'll focus. A lot of these eons and eras, they're just too big of a chunk of time to talk about. So we can break eras, in this case, down into periods. And these are nice chunks to talk about. And then we can further break down periods into even smaller delineations called epochs. And we can break the Paleogene down into the Paleocene, Eocene, and Oligocene. We can break the Neogene into Miocene and the Pliocene, and the Quaternary into the Pleistocene and the Holocene. These are a little too small of a chunk to kind of talk about. So the reason we talk about periods, it's almost like Goldilocks, right? The porridge, not too hot, not too cold, just right. So in geology, when we're talking about geologic age, eons and eras, those are just too big of a chunks of time. There's a lot of stuff happened on Earth, and those are just too general of big chunks to talk about. Well, the reverse of that, epochs, it's just a little too small. It's just a little too small. So we focus on periods. So we focus on these periods, and you'll become familiar with these names. We'll touch on them a little bit in the Unit 4 lab and continuing on throughout the semester. So that's geologic age. So putting some geologic age, and typically we would talk about, okay, this rock is from the Devonian period. This fossil is from the Cretaceous period. And that's typically, again, these periods are typically what we focus on in geology when we speak of geologic age. We might talk about the other ones, but for the most part, periods are where we focus. All right, so let's pause here. When we come back, we'll talk about absolute age, how we put an exact number on the age of the Earth, as well as how do we put an exact number on dating rocks. I'll see you back here in just a minute.